The State of Israel will forever be associated with its military and its strong emphasis on national security. The IDF and the Israeli arms industry cannot be separated from the country's story. Policymakers in Jerusalem are very well aware of this and use the country's military record and its arms industry as conduits for diplomacy. It may not surprise you to hear that Israel is one of the world's top 10 arms exporters. Israel has exported weapons, surveillance devices, and expertise to kleptocratic African dictatorships, Latin American banana republics, and European liberal democracies like Germany and the Netherlands. Ironically, Jerusalem uses weapons of war and repression as a means of improving ties with other countries. In this video, we're going to take a look at the Israeli defense industry and how Jerusalem uses arms exports as a diplomatic tool. The roots of Israel's defense industry date back to the British Mandate, the Haganah having set up secret weapons factories in Palestine in the 1930s. During the First Arab-Israeli War in the late 1940s, Israeli troops were armed with World War II-era small arms and vehicles purchased as scrap after the war. In the first decade of the state's existence, the Israeli defense sector made a splash with the iconic Uzi submachine gun. The Uzi, designed by an IDF officer named Uzziel Gal, entered service in 1954. Many nations' military and security forces have adopted the Uzi. It was one of the first weapons to incorporate a telescoping bolt design, allowing the magazine to be housed in the pistol grip. In an effort to break its diplomatic isolation, Tel Aviv leaned heavily upon realpolitik. This involved cultivating ties with regimes with less than stellar human rights records. If you'd like to watch my video on Israel's arming of death squads in Latin America, you can do so here. According to a Washington Post article from June 1984, but Israel has sold arms in the past to Honduras and other Central American countries, and it is looking to sell more for its own economic, diplomatic, and security interests. Due to the US Congress's opposition to further American involvement in El Salvador and Nicaragua's civil wars, Israel functioned as a surrogate supplier for forces in those countries. To use specific examples, the Israelis have sold weapons to Nicaraguan dictator Anastasio Somoza. The Israelis have also sold arms to Argentina's military junta, guilty of a long list of human rights abuses, including against Argentinian Jews. Most notably, Sub-Saharan Africa, and South Africa especially, were important markets for the Israeli military-industrial complex too. Tel Aviv was an important source of military equipment for Pretoria. Israel allowed licensed versions of its weapons to be produced in South Africa. SADF servicemen also passed through Israeli schools. During operations in Angola in 1981, the SADF utilized Israeli-made drones. If you want to watch my video on South Africa and Israel's relationship specifically, you can do so here. Tel Aviv did not just export weapons, however. Israeli security expertise has been crucial for the countries that have received it. In Morocco, Israel assisted in the training of the king's bodyguards and in reorganizing the country's intelligence services. In Cameroon, Israeli nationals trained and armed an elite unit called the Rapid Intervention Battalion. In the Congo, during the rule of Mobutu Sese Seko, Israel aided in the retraining and reorganization of the country's military. More specifically, the Israelis helped form and train a Congolese paratrooper corps. Singapore, the tiny city-state in Southeast Asia, relied upon Israeli military aid during its early years. Israel covertly trained and built up Singapore's armed forces. Israel's conflicts during the Cold War spawned quite a few Israeli military innovations. One such innovation is the Merkava main battle tank. The Merkava, meaning chariot in biblical Hebrew, is produced by Israel Military Industries. It is well armored against attacks from above, primarily those by drones. The Merkava's engine is mounted in the front of the tank, functioning as a protective barrier for the crew. This tank is designed for urban warfare, which has been a feature of Israel's more recent wars. Its survivability and proven performance in combat have cemented its reputation as an effective platform. As Israel aligned itself more and more within the United States' orbit, Israel would provide military aid to pro-Western and especially pro-American regimes in third world countries. For Israel, gaining friends in the international arena, no matter how dirty they may be, was part of ensuring the state's survival. However, even liberal democracies in the global north would look to Israel as a military supplier. The Israeli-Arab conflict would have far-reaching consequences which are still being felt around the world today. The conclusion of the Cold War altered Israel's threat environment. The end of the Cold War resulted in undisputed American global hegemony and a weakened Russia greatly reduced in size. However, Russia was still exporting arms to Iran and Syria, still two of Israel's enemies to this day. Israel has managed to market its perpetual state of war as opportunities for its locally produced weapon systems to see use in combat conditions. In other words, the Israelis market their military hardware as quote-unquote battle-tested. As mentioned earlier in the video, Israel is one of the world's top 10 arms exporters. India is the Israeli defense industry's top customer. India spends over $1 billion annually on Israeli weapon systems. Israel provided military assistance to New Delhi during the Cold War, although the two countries did not normalize relations until 1992. In 1999, the Israelis furnished India with drones and surveillance systems during its war with Pakistan. Ties between Jerusalem and New Delhi have only deepened in recent years. I actually plan on making a video in the future about Indo-Israeli relations, so I will expand on this in greater detail in that video. Other customers include the Philippines and even the US. Believe it or not, Israel was once on the cusp of selling China an early warning radar system back in 2000. However, the US put pressure on Israel to cancel the deal. Azerbaijan is another country which has purchased arms from Israel. The military hardware purchased by the Azerbaijanis was put to the test in its conflict with Armenia over Nagorno-Karabakh. Armenian missile attacks on Baku were intercepted by Israeli-made air defense systems. The Azerbaijanis also used Israeli-made drones. While Azerbaijan's track record on human rights is certainly worthy of reproach, Israel's exports to Baku make sense from a detached and pragmatic point of view. It should also be mentioned that oil imported from Azerbaijan accounts for nearly a third of Israel's yearly oil needs. The Trophy Active Protection System, a mechanism on armored vehicles designed to protect against projectiles like RPGs, was designed in Israel and is used on M1 Abrams tanks in service with the US military. Reactive armor tiles, first used in combat by the IDF during its 1982 invasion of Lebanon, are key features on tanks such as the Russian T-90 and the Abrams. The famed Iron Dome air defense system has been purchased by countries like the US, South Korea, and India. Countries like Canada, Finland, and the UK have purchased portions of the Iron Dome's technology too. Finland also bought the David Sling air defense system from Israel in 2023. Germany, meanwhile, bought the Arrow 3 air defense system from the Israelis in late 2023. Jerusalem's defense-related exports to Europe are not limited to hardware. Israeli tech firm NSO Group is responsible for the creation of Pegasus, a spyware that can infiltrate a mobile phone and glean information like passwords, call logs, and web searches without the user's knowledge or consent. The sale of Pegasus licenses is restricted to foreign governments and must be cleared by the Israeli Ministry of Defense. Unsurprisingly, autocratic states like Bahrain, Saudi Arabia, and the UAE are among the authorized users of Pegasus. These regimes, among others, use Pegasus as an instrument of internal repression. However, countries like Germany and the Netherlands obtained licenses for Pegasus also. Access to Israeli surveillance technology like Pegasus takes the form of a diplomatic quid pro quo arrangement. In 2019, Germany and the Netherlands were reportedly granted access to Pegasus and changed their votes on an annual pro-Palestinian UN resolution in favor of Israel. In 2021, the Biden administration sanctioned NSO Group over its Pegasus spyware. A suspect detection system called Cogito 1002, developed by an Israeli company, is used at security checkpoints in the West Bank to identify suspicious persons based on biofeedback sensing, after people place their hand on a sensor while responding to questions on a computer. This system is marketed as having been tested on the Palestinians. Israeli firms have also been selling surveillance technology to Indonesia, even though Jakarta and Jerusalem still have no formal diplomatic ties. Indonesia's president-elect Prabowo Subianto has been accused of committing human rights violations in West Papua and East Timor, intensifying concerns about the human rights situation in the country. Recently, the possibility of Jakarta and Jerusalem establishing relations has garnered media attention. However, the jury is still out on that and probably will be until there is a resolution to the issue of Palestinian statehood. Jerusalem has turned its constant state of armed conflict into a marketing tool and a means of winning itself friends in the international arena. The Arab-Israeli conflict has given Israel testing grounds for its indigenous defense sector. Israeli weaponry and surveillance equipment carrying the battle-tested stamp as well as Israeli expertise allow Jerusalem to cultivate closer relationships with faraway countries. What do you guys think? Do you have any experiences with Israeli military hardware? Will Israel increase its market share of the global arms trade? Let me know in the comments. Thanks for watching.